everyone can come together and listen to the teachings. Again, we refer to meetings in which that we have as SAT song, True Association, come out and hear the true teachings. Today, before we introduce the topic of discussion, I guess there need to be several announcements made. As you well know, June, along with Pamela, have passed out index cards. What we would like for you guys to do is to think of a topic in which that you may want Bhagwan to speak on, or either any questions in which that you may have, may want to ask me, Bhagwan. Please feel free to write those questions down. Again, we are all here to learn and to also attempt to understand the teachings. Today's topic is kind of confusing. I thought it was God is. However, today's topic is an interesting thing that transpired in thinking of this particular topic. June and I, along with Pamela, we were trying to think of a topic. And we all wanted Bhagwan to speak on the topic as it related to the nature of the mind, all right? And then here come this Siddharthi.
And blew it
all right, he just blew it into his proper perspective by coming up with this topic, the anatomy of consciousness. So we really do appreciate all the energies and thought in which that you just, I guess he just summarized it so perfectly, Siddharthi. Thank you so much. Today's topic will be the anatomy of consciousness. All right, and as you well know from the flyer, it will be a three-part topic. Also, another announcement in which that I would like to make is that next week on the 8th of March, Bhagwan will be speaking at the Kelly Branch Library located where, Bilal?
62nd and Normal.
62nd and Normal, I think the second floor. The second floor. So for more information, please see the heart and soul of the House of Ra, Bilal Kasura, Africa. Again, I know you guys have been patiently waiting, and thank you so much. I don't know what Guru Sahib is going to say behind this one, but I'm interested. But at any rate, without any further ado, I would like to present to you Mahat Seva Bhagwan Ra Africa. Namo Guru Vaya.
Namo Sanghavaya. Rashika Mahat. May we take a moment of brief silence, please. Sanghavaya. I'd like to, of course, extend my heartfelt apologies. You're right, Sathra. It seems that there's some truth about that statement about black folks in time. I've tried my best to transcend the stereotype, but some things cannot be transcended. But again, my heartfelt apologies for being tardy today. I was trying to finish up some errands, and I got a little tired. Of course, I'd like to say hello to my good brother Elijah Radhaswami-Saf, one of my oldest friends, and Achai and Ben Sonidi Radhaswami-Saf. Thank you so much for coming and infusing our little gathering with the spirit of the Master. And I hope that we can do honors to your presence here. by receiving all of the love and spirituality that you bring to our meeting. Again, many, many thanks for coming and being a part of our little gathering. And with no further ado, if I can have the permission of the elders, I would like to begin to tackle this problem, this great problem of understanding consciousness. Acha, but I think that before I do that, there's a naming ceremony, is that correct, for today? His sister has decided to take a big name. You all know what this big name means, that she's now has made a commitment to render all kinds of service to you. So I do suggest that after the ceremony that you take full advantage of her. And it is really a happy occasion because I was told last week, Jim, that you were supposed to also have received a big name, but this Unsar, you see, got such a big name, I have no energy now. So you will forgive me for having to take a couple of weeks to recuperate. It certainly does not in any shape, form, or fashion diminish the importance of your intent today. So if you would just slide closer, please. And again, I would ask you in the audience to bear with us, but first things first. First things first. And for those of you who don't know, I have said on so many of these same occasions that when one decides to pursue the spiritual life, essentially what is occurring is a literal rebirth. That the person is becoming an entirely different kind of human being than they have been in the past. And in order to remind them of this dropping of their past, because remember, it is this clinging to the past, it is this living in the past that becomes such a great barrier in the spiritual life. Because in our past, we have been so stupid, so blind, so ignorant. We have done so many things that it becomes almost impossible for us to forgive ourselves, to move on with our lives. And so you see this coming to the path is a declaration of freedom from the past. And to mark the occasion, very often the person will take a name. And they will not take just any kind of name. It should be a name that somehow reminds you of your goal. Somehow continuously keep the goal in view. Your Ishta, as the Hindu mystics have called it. And so this name then means much. It means much. It is a way of being reminded of our commitment to be born again. And this, of course, June, is a birth that you will give to yourself, you see. Now you have the opportunity to create who you will be. Up until this point, of course, you have simply been the product of your parents, of your teachers, of your friends, of all of the myriads of people who have influenced and shaped you. They have given birth to you, you see. And in the process, they have also damaged you. Perhaps they had steered her in many directions that were not in her best interest. Certainly did not relate to her spirituality. Acha, so today you have now the onerous task of giving birth to yourself. And remember, there will be some birth pain. Just like in giving birth to a child, there will always be some pain. But just the thought of the joy that will result from the giving of birth to your own higher self, that will be more than enough to sustain you through this journey. I understand that this Satra was very instrumental in this process. It seems this Satra is everywhere. So be forewarned, you may be his next victim. Right? Be careful. Acha. But he has certainly suggested to me a very beautiful and appropriate name for you. The name Prakriti. Something about this name Prakriti you must understand. The Dravidian mystics that laid the foundation of what has become known as Eastern philosophy and yoga in the Indus Kush Valley. These Africans, Indians, these Dravidian people gave a name to the aspect of God that gives shape and form to everything. They called it Prakriti. Prakriti then is the substance, the actual stuff that God is made out of. And interestingly enough, Satra, it is female. Please make a note of that. Because some of you men think that you, right, are the big shot. No. This energy, this power is called Prakriti. Prakriti is the very stuff that creation is made out of. When God was looking for a place to stand out of the great moon, it could find no place to stand except on Prakriti. Prakriti then is substance. Hence, you will find women are very earthy. Now, us men, our minds are all over the place. We have so many kinds of crazy ambitions. We want to go to the moon, and we want to build tall buildings, and so many other things. You see, but a woman is very rooted. She's very rooted in reality because she is the mother of reality. Reality comes from her. All that you can touch, see, taste, smell, and feel, all that you can experience within the domain of consciousness is made out of this thing called Prakriti. Prakriti then is the mother lode of all that exists. It is the great mother energy. And through it, all things have come into being. Please make a note of that there is nothing that you can experience within the entire realm of consciousness that has not been given shape and form by this female energy called Prakriti. So it is a big name, you see, because when we call you Prakriti, we are asking you to return to this level of divine female energy, you see. Not this ordinary thing, you see, but this divine thing, this receptacle in which the Purusa, the Lord itself, entered into. Prakriti is the very womb that the Lord itself incarnated into to become manifest. Do you follow me? So Prakriti, then you have a big task to live up to. You should become like a womb, you see. And anything coming within a 24-mile radius of you must blossom, you see, must be brought into life, you see. It is a big name, you see. You must do much meditation, much spiritual practice to be worthy, you see. And remember, it is this becoming worthy of this name Prakriti that will mean the most to you. It will also, Prakriti, mean the most to us. Because your attainment then of this status of Prakriti is not only for yourself, but for the sake of all sentient beings, even down to the last blade of grace. It is my hope then that this name will inspire you to do much meditation and to bring countless beings to this place. It is with great honor, great joy, that I welcome you into the ranks now of the Bodhisattvas, those who have dedicated their life to the spiritual welfare of all sentient. Brothers and sisters, may I have the pleasure of sharing with you Prakriti right now. Before we move on, since I'm in this mood, there is one other person here who some of you know and some of you don't know. But those who know that she has always been the brains of the house. I just said right. If this Vazubalal is the heart, then it must have a brain. You know I'm not the brains. All right? About that, there should be no dispute. But the house does have a brain. And this individual has been so instrumental throughout all of the years and being capable and committed to reducing as much of the teachings as possible into its written form. You see? Long before you all came, she was here. And even capturing just the slightest little truth that might accidentally drop from my mouth, she framed it in words, you see? And she has been doing this for nearly 30 years. And she has never really refused any task that I've given her, however ridiculous that task has been. And you know, I can be ridiculous, you see. So I wanted to share with you one of the beautiful things that she did for me a number of years ago. She probably don't even know that she did it. She's gotten old now. You see, her mind is beginning to go. But still, her works live on. And I wanted to share this with the Sangha. And so we put it together, have called it the Rebellion of the Soul. It is a brief introduction into the rebirth of African mysticism and spirituality. I believe Sadarji has one copy. There's not been any printed up, so don't let this rascal get away with it today. But of course, if you too would like to share in the incredible skills of this young lady, then please find a way to order yourself a copy. You can always call the house in Bilal, and he will always, as you all know, see to it that you get things. So, I would like to thank you, Big M, and we call her Big M, for the work that you have done. Please come, and I give you back your own knowledge. May your efforts in the past and your efforts today bring countless beings to this path. All right. So, now Setra, we're going to talk about consciousness today. And Sadarji is responsible for this. Is that right? Oh boy. This is a humongous topic. Because when we talk about consciousness, now we have reached the ultimate mystery in life. You know, there are many mysteries in life. Mysteries like love. And last week we talked about this mystery called love. There are mysteries called meditation, death, so forth and so on. There's so many mysterious things that can occupy our search. But of all of these things, the most mysterious thing is the nature of your own consciousness. We spend so much of our life investigating so many other things, but we never look at that thing that is more significant than anything that you can possibly search for. Ajahn Setra, I am reminded of a story that is told very often about this kind of valuable thing like consciousness. And the story is about a rich man traveling in his caravan to a neighboring village, and on the way, you see, he stops into an inn. And it turns out that this inn is ran by a thief, a master thief, a professional thief. In fact, that's how he got the inn. He had been so successful in robbing that he had made a profit. And it became a way of him luring his victims to him. And so this rich man, you see, stopped to spend the evening at this inn of the thief. And the thief, when he saw this rich man come in, knew that this was the mother lode. That finally he had come across someone by robbing which he could actually retire, because the man was loaded. Do you understand? And so he certainly rolled out the red carpet and showed the man to his very best room and then whittle down the hours while he laid in wait to pick his opportunity to rob this man, this great one. You see. And so as the night went on and the man retired and came downstairs a little later for his supper, this thief had his opportunity to now go to this man's room, which he searched high and low in search of the gold. This man had such a large bag of gold, he could hardly wait to get his hands on it. And he looked all over the place. He went through everything. He could not find that gold. This was incredible, because this man is a master thief. There has never been anyone that he had been unable to rob. He knew all the places that one would hide that which is valuable. And yet, said Torah, he could not find this bag of gold. The next morning, during checkout, the thief, you see, actually asked that traveler, because he wanted to know. It was a matter of knowledge now, you see. He wanted to know, man, where did you hide this money? He says, you know, he confessed in faith, said, you know, I'm a thief. And I've been robbing people for 20 years, and I have never failed. I know all of the ins and outs of the business. You are the first man that I could not rob. Please, you must tell me, where did you hide that gold? Please have mercy on me, you see. And the man looked at him. He said, brother, he said, just as you was able to recognize me as being rich, when I came into the inn, I also recognized you as a thief. And he said, therefore, when I went upstairs, I did not put my gold in my room. I put it under your pillow because I knew you would never look in your own room. And in the same way, you see, God has done something like that. God has manifested itself in you in the form of your consciousness. Whenever you're talking about, is there a God? What is God? This is a tautology. It is the same answer as to what are you? Whenever you discover who you are, you have discovered who God is. And the essence of God is this consciousness of God. So we will have to look into this anatomy of consciousness. It is a big subject, you see. We will be talking about it over a couple of occasions, you see. And I will do my best to make some sense of it, but please, you will have to be very patient with me, you see. You mustn't hold me to too high of a standard, because the subject is very deep, you see. We are now entering into the very deepest mystery of all, which is the mystery of your own conscious being. Have you ever thought about it? Why is it that you are conscious? There doesn't seem to be any logical explanation for it. You see? There isn't any kind of reason for it. You simply are. And you are conscious. You see? Now, I don't want you to confuse consciousness with a lot of other things, like mind. Mind, Satra, has no consciousness in and of itself. Mind is a process that occurs in consciousness. Whenever experience is divided into beginning, middle, and end, whenever it is pumped into the framework of time, space, and causality, that is what gives you the experience of having a mind. But remember, the mind is just a process. It is not conscious in and of its own self. Consciousness, then, is a thing that pre-exists mind. It is a priori. In fact, you cannot even give it a beginning. It is very profound. It itself exists outside of time. All time comes out of consciousness. So when we talk about consciousness now, we have truly entered squarely on the path. A few more things. Awareness. Awareness is that part of consciousness that we are using. You see? Because consciousness is a total thing. And of this totality of consciousness, in most instances, you are only functioning in that area, that quantity of consciousness that we call awareness. When consciousness is restricted to time, restricted to space, restricted to causality, That is what we mean by the term awareness. And then when this awareness itself is further reduced, further reduced, shrink even more, that is what we refer to as attention. So when we talk about consciousness, I will be using these terms: attention, awareness. These are, again, simply different quantities and functions of consciousness. Consciousness. The masters have said that this consciousness is your very nature. When we talk about one's Buddha nature, what we are talking about is nothing more than this naked, pure consciousness without any covers on it. You see? When we are talking about knowing thyself, becoming self-realized, we are talking about becoming aware of who you are simply as conscious energy. In fact, this is the whole journey on the path, is to recover this awareness, this experience of being simply pure being without any restriction. So let us begin at the beginning. Now, for most of us, you see, we have become very much identified with this body, this physical body. You see? Because our consciousness is permeating this physical body. Actually, that is incorrect for me to state that. What is more true to the reality is that this body exists in consciousness. Because everything exists in consciousness. It is not like you're moving. It is not like you're going anywhere. You are not moving in time. You are not moving in space. Space and time is moving in you. Please make a note of that. It is a very different phenomenon. Satora, we're going into deep waters now. You understand? We're moving into the deep wisdom now. And if you don't have little wisdom, there's every possibility that you will be lost today. Every possibility that you will not be able to follow. You see? So, please be patient. We will open up the discourse today because there are going to be a lot of questions here. Because you've been thinking along a certain line as it relates to consciousness. You have been confusing consciousness with your mental activities, you see. And this is a very different phenomenon. So the first thing to understand that is in the hierarchy of those things, and again, please, I can't use the word thing because consciousness is not a thing. But what can I do? The language is so limited. But of those many things that compete for your identity, those things that you consider yourself to be, you see, none of those things really addresses the facticity of your just being pure consciousness. Remember, this experience of being pure consciousness is what comes at the end of one's meditation. This is interesting. That is why all mystics, all saints, all sages, irrespective of time, place, and culture, have emphasized one thing and one thing only: meditation. Because it is only through a process of meditation that you can move deep into the nature of your being, dropping first this body, and then the sensory systems contained in the body, and then the mind itself, and then your own sense of individuality and separation, the ego, to return to a rediscovery of your true nature. You see? So we begin on the peripheral of our being now, because that's where most of us are at. And you've been thinking you're a body, a physical body. The whole identity is with the physical body. You see? And you've been thinking that I am a woman or I am a man. You have become so identified with the history of this physical body. But you've had millions of physical bodies. You think this is the first physical body that you've had? Millions. And unfortunately, some will have millions more bodies.
Not just human body, you've had the bodies of an animal. You've been a plant. You have, by definition, traveled through a endless variety of forms in order to attain this precious human. You see? But the journey does not end here. The journey does not end with simply becoming a human being in this body. In fact, this is where the journey begins. It is interesting. So, how do we now have the experience of the true nature of our being, this thing called consciousness? So I will have to talk to you some about meditation, because there's no way to talk about this subject and not talk about meditation. Absolutely impossible. Can't be done. You see? We must talk about it within the context and the framework of meditation. Because again, it is the only process by which you can have the experience of your true identity. And the emphasis is on the experience of your true identity. Now, I know many of you have been wasting your whole life trying to read a book and discover who you are. Now, how would this be possible? The consciousness have created the book. The book is a small thing. It itself is a reflection of the consciousness. So you cannot know thyself through a process of studying books. You can't know thyself through a process of coming to these meetings. We must be clear about that. There's only one process by which you can know anything about the nature of consciousness, your true identity. And that is, you must undergo a process called meditation. And when you begin to undergo this process of meditation, slowly now, you begin to come into higher and higher realizations of your true nature. One of the first experiences you have when you are able to meditate is that you become aware of not being a physical body. This is interesting. And remember, meditation starts with using that tiniest condensing of consciousness in the form of attention. This human attention is a great gift. Meditation begins then by manipulating one's human attention. The way you use your attention is the key, you see, to the rediscovery of your true nature. And remember, until you rediscover who you really are, there is no possibility of you coming into a state of peace and rest. Now, that is not possible. In fact, this whole urge that moves us in everything that we do is this urge to become one, this urge to become enlightened, this urge to become whole again, this urge to become that which we truly are. This is what motivates all of our activities. See? And so when you begin to meditate, the first thing that you learn to do is to, first of all, sit this body down and make it still. Be still and know that I, the thing that you've been calling I, be still and know that that I is God. This is interesting. You've been thinking, I am the body. I am my relationships. But the mystics and saints are saying, no. The I that you have been calling the body in your relationship is God. It is a very different experience. And you're beginning to get a little glimpse of this as you move through the process of meditation. So by sitting the body down first, etc. And remember, again, I cannot talk about this subject just intellectually. Now, it's not going to do any good. If you don't know how to meditate, all right, you're going to get a little information, but that's not much. You will simply remain as misidentified as you were before you heard the talk. Nothing is going to change for you. Your reality will not be affected. Yes, you will get a little information, yes, but information is not the same as transformation. You see. Unless you are in a discipline of meditation, then it's going to be very hard for you to understand and truly appreciate these talks that we'll be having for the next couple of The first thing then is that we must sit this body down into a firm posture and begin the process of withdrawing attention. Now, somewhere in one of the books, it must be the book Bilal on the Bado teachings, in that book we have talked a lot about the kinds of experiences that you will begin to undergo as you move through this process called meditation, in terms of your experience of your real identity as being that of pure consciousness. So as you sit in meditation, the first thing, of course, is that you must now withdraw your attention back inside yourself. Because all mystics, all saints have said that this God that you are looking for is within you. What is meant by that? This withinness, where is it? What is that? This withinness is the consciousness itself. And so just as a spider must withdraw its web back into itself, in the same way, you must begin a process of withdrawing your attention back into yourself. And as you begin this process, your whole experience of who you are goes unchanging. Your identity goes unshifted. And it begins to shift from the lowest physical level back to the highest spiritual level. And so as we begin this process now of withdrawing attention back to that point in the body behind the eyes, which is the seat of the mind, you see. But the African mystic called the Mir Center. The Hindu mystics have called it the Ajna Chakra. Tisra Til, the third eye, the eye center, the eye of Heru. There's been so many names given to this point. But the whole ideal is that it is from here that your attention is flowing out and creating the world. Actually, you have not moved from here. This is interesting. At no time are you ever able to move from this eye center. Your whole experience of this world is occurring from this one point in this physical life, behind this eye center. It is not like you're moving in space. Space is moving in you. Do you follow me? It's a very different experience. You are simply sitting here, conscious of the experience that consciousness itself has created. You are sitting here. And so the first ideal then is to bring all of the attention here, behind the two physical eyes. As you begin to do this, the first experience that you will have is that you will lose awareness of this physical body and of the world outside. This is a very interesting experience. Because you have been thinking that you're so much this physical body. But when you are able to withdraw just a little bit within to the eye center, just a little bit, the first experience that you will have is that you will become very much aware of not being just this physical body. At first, it's really frightening. It's really scary because you don't know what has happened. You think that you're dead or something. In fact, so many people are always continuously making comments in their reports that Bhagwan, what is happening in this meditation, you know, it's like I'm being floating around and all these other things. It's a very frightening experience because they've never experienced being something other than just their physical bodies, you see. So we must first of all withdraw the attention here behind the two physical eyes into the point called Tisra Til and begin to focus the streams of consciousness in the form of our attention. And as we begin to do that, our identity, who we think we are, what we think we are, begins to shift. And the experiences become very, very interesting when one is able to do that. And remember, anybody can do this. No guru is necessary. Let me make this very clear. Anybody can withdraw into the eye center, at least up to the astral level. It's no problem. Just a little sincerity and a little seriousness is required, you see. And it is here then that you have your first experience of being more than this physical body. And remember, there is no other way. I don't know how to emphasize this. How do I talk about this thing? It becomes difficult because you want me to be able to give you some kind of ideal of what consciousness is, pure nature is like, without going here. Now, how will I do that? Because anything you think of will be wrong by definition. You can't have a concept. It is beyond your ability to form a concept. You have to generate the experience, and that can only be done through this process called meditation. You see? At this astral level, then, of consciousness, because now you have to understand that as you withdraw and interiorize your consciousness, it triggers different levels of consciousness. Is this clear? Now, as this process of withdrawal matures, you begin to have different conscious experiences. You see, what are the kind of conscious experiences that you are capable of at this level? I mean, it's so narrow. You are almost having no encounter with reality. Please make a note of that. What you are calling real is almost ludicrous. The Hindu mystics have called that is Maya. That is fantasy. Your consciousness, it is so contracted, so condensed, so weak that you are not having any experience of this thing called reality at all. Anything that falls outside of the range of your physical senses, you cannot experience at all. If you can't see, taste, touch, smell it, right? You can't have no experience at all. Your whole range of experience is limited by this physical body. Hence the great ignorance that we suffer from. Hence the great misery that we suffer from. It is because your consciousness is so small, so contracted, so condensed. You are so misidentified that you are literally disconnected from reality. And remember, this is what enlightenment simply means. The recovery of that level of consciousness that allows you to see things clearly. That's what enlightenment is all about, you see? So that you can now come into right relationships, you see? As this attention then is interiorized, and more of your attention is brought out of the world and out of your body into the eye center, your whole conscious experience begins to shift. And it shifts specifically in terms of your experience of time, space, and causality. It's very interesting. When one is able to come to the astral level of consciousness, that level of consciousness right above this waking level of consciousness, you have to remember that ordinarily we all experience three fundamental levels of consciousness on a daily basis. Of course, the first is this level of consciousness that we call wakeful level of consciousness, right? The consciousness that we are in now, right? And of course, the next one is when we go into a dream, right? That is also another level of consciousness. It even distorts reality more, doesn't it, right? And then we fall into a deep dreamless state where consciousness now, you see, it is so contracted that you don't pick up any experience. Now, outside when you're laying in your bed in this deep dreamless state, you don't even know you're in the world. You don't know you're outside, you don't know you have a body, you don't know anything. You're at a maximum level of ignorance. You understand? You don't even know you exist. You see, the contraction is complete, total. As you move from that into a dream state, now, you see, some identity comes in. But it's very bizarre. You dream, and sometimes you dream you're a bird. Really interesting, isn't it? Sometimes you dream you're an animal, or if you're a man, you dream you're a woman. If you're a woman, you dream you're a man. Your identity is very fluid, very loose. Reality is experienced in a very jumbled, upside-down fashion. Time, for instance, your whole experience of time in a dream is different. Please make a note of that. Have you noticed? Right? Time moves so fast or so slow. You are able to defy space, right? You're flying through the air. You see, a lot of you be flying in them dreams, right? You're able to defy all of these kinds of parameters that we normally place on reality. And as you move from that dream level now into this wakeful level, now your experience of time is further altered, right? Your experience of space is further altered. Even your sense of identity is further altered, right? You see? But as you move beyond this wakeful level of consciousness to the next level of consciousness, the astral level of consciousness, now your experience becomes very radically different. You see? Radically different. Just as the experience of the dream is clearly seen as being fantasy, an illusion, upon awakening. Right? In the same way, when one is able to withdraw one's attention, collect it, to bring enough of consciousness back to this point, that one's whole experience of reality is shifted. Said Rod, this is a very different thing. You see? We're talking about an actual shift in consciousness, an actual different kind of experience, a larger view of that which we call the world. There's so much of the world that you can't even see. Now, some of you, your consciousness is so contracted you see no beauty. You look at the world and all you see is horror and ugliness and all that is wrong and evil. Your consciousness is so minuscule that it cannot pick up the experience of the beauty in this world. You look at another human being, now you can't see nothing that good in this human being. What's up with that? Why is your view so narrow, so limited? It is because you are so unconscious. You are so unconscious you can't even see who loves you at all. Now people love you and you can't even see their love. How can you see? You are barely conscious. Bilal said that most of us only have enough consciousness to barely cross the street. More than that, we do not have. You see? But Bilal says, His Holiness Jesus Christ says that we have such a low level of consciousness, such a low intensity of consciousness that we are technically dead. Jesus said, technically, you are dead. Looking at it from the level of consciousness, technically you are dead. Guru Jeff says that you're not even human anymore. Now you're simply a robot. You see? Now you're just moving according to the forces of nature. Like a swirl of dirt is thrown into the air with the coming of a breeze. In the same way, this is how you are. You see? Just hither and thither. No consciousness. No awareness. Actually, Jesus is very correct. You are simply moving through life very unconsciously. Right? Unconsciously. You don't even know what has happened. You don't even know life is happening. It is really tragic when you are living and you don't even know you're alive. You're still waiting for life to happen. You're still waiting to be happy. Please make a note of that. All your happiness is somewhere in the distant future. Right? Or laying somewhere in the musty past. But it is never here. And why can you not experience the life that is going on here now? It is because you don't have enough consciousness to live in the present. Please make a note of that. It takes a little consciousness, a little awareness to be able to function in the present. And since most of us don't have that much awareness, hence you live in the past somewhere. Because that's all the consciousness you have. You can't go beyond the level of memory. That's as much consciousness as you got. You live in your memory. Or you live in your fantasies, your illusions, your dreams. You are simply dreaming with your eyes open. Even those who are in this room, many of us are simply sitting here dreaming with our eyes open. Brother Washington, if you could take a telescope and look into the minds of these people, what you will find is none but fantasy going on as we speak. They cannot even hold their minds still. Not for an instant. And when we begin to meditate, this is the first discovery. that we have is that, my God, I have no control over my own attention. I have become so weak, right? So feeble-minded, that I cannot even hold on and pursue any part of reality consistently. Try it. Try it. It doesn't have to be a profound subject. You need not be in the process of contemplating some profound. Just simple. Try to just think about a rose for a few seconds. You can't even do that. Soon you fall asleep and you go into your fantasy. You see? It's no different, right? So technically, most of us who are walking around, just as Bilal said, are walking around dreaming. And only occasionally we drift into consciousness. And then we drift back out into our dreams. And you experience that subjectively in the form of your daydream. And the worst thing about it, there's nothing you can do about it. You're just too weak. You have not practiced. Hence, the emphasis then on meditation and practice. Now, when we come into this astral level of consciousness, it is as dramatically different from the wakeful level of consciousness as the wakeful level of consciousness is different from the dream. Very dramatic. And our experiences are very different. For instance, at the astral level of consciousness, now again, Satra, today I'm just drawing a broad picture, you see. In the next meeting we'll get into the nuts and bolts, the nitty gritty. But today I'm just opening up the subject, right? To kind of familiarize with you, to give you a little flavor, right? At this astral level of consciousness, the experience of time is very different. Very different. At this level of experience, for instance, you can't hold time. Time is flowing. Hence, you're living in the past. What are you really doing when you are clinging to your memory? You're trying to hold on to some experience that was pleasurable, perhaps, right? And since you don't have enough consciousness to live in the present, you have no other choice but to try to get all your joy and happiness fulfilled through clinging and living in your dead past. You see? You're trying to hold the experience that have given you a little happiness 20 years ago. You're trying to hold on to that. It's all that you got. Because you are in a forlorn land called the now. You can't even function in the now. How can you function in the now? So you function in the past. And there you are clinging, holding on, doing your best to squeeze as much little joy and happiness that you can. You're trying to hold time. At the astral level, you can hold time. You can freeze frame it. Right? It's very interesting. It's very interesting. You see? At this level, if you're not in the past, you're running somewhere off in the future. Because again, under no circumstances can you be here now. So you drift off and you run into the future. You have that lottery mindset when you buy that ticket and then you wait for 7 o'clock, right? And during that process, you just going through all kinds of fantasy. You thinking, boy, if I get this 30 million, you done paid off, you done made a list of all the bills you're gonna pay. You pick the house out, the trips you're gonna take, who you gonna give some money from, who you gonna tell kiss your ass. You've done it all, right? And then, of course, 7 o'clock rolls around, and you didn't win. All right? Now, you come crashing down. You see my point? So we do that all the time. Now we're fantasizing somewhere in the future, right? Trying to get happy because we cannot function. In the astral level of consciousness, we can hold on to time. Literally, we can freeze frame. Our experience of space is different. Why? Because we're no longer restricted by this physical body. You see? With this physical body, now you can't go through no wall. How will you go through a wall? You see? At the astral level, you are able to function in what they call an astral body. Very interesting. The astral body is what sits inside of this body. It is the astral body, what the African mystics call the Ka. Right? It is this astral body that sits in this body that houses all of your sensory systems of perception. Because you've been under the illusion that these eyes have the capacity to see in and of themselves. That is not true. You see? It is the eyes in the astral body that are actually responsible for your physical capacity to see. That is why on Club in a dream, can't you see? Are you using any physical eye? In your dream, aren't all of your sensory systems working? Are they not? Are they not functioning? Are you not tasting, hearing, smelling, etc., etc.? Of course. Because this capacity to see, it is not arising from the physical level. This is deep. This capacity to see, this capacity to have the variety and forms of perception resides in the ka that sits inside of this physical body. In fact, this physical body is made in the image of the ka. It's interesting. And at the astral level of consciousness, when you have been able to liberate yourself from the grave of the physical body, you are able to now recapture a much wider range of conscious experience. The thing I want you to understand is that as we move up this hierarchy of consciousness, the payoff is that our range of conscious experience dramatically expands. You see? So at the astral level, you can move through walls. What is the problem? There is no physical body to restrict you at all. And when you move, the first thing you discover is that you can move at a much more rapid speed. This is really interesting. You find that at the astral level of your being, you have the capacity to move at the speed of light. Interesting. Right? This physical body, you see, can't do that. It is restricted, bogged down. You see? Hence astral travel. You can travel all over the place. You can't go to the farthermost dimensions of the galaxy. Why? You got a physical body. How are you going to do that? You see? How are you going to do that? So for those who are limited to a kind of conscious experience at the physical level, for them, nothing else exists but Chicago. You understand? The rest of the universe, for all practical purposes, don't exist for you. You have no encounter with it, right? And when you think about it, what is Chicago? What is the earth? You're talking about a tiny little speck of mud floating in the immensity of space. You're talking about nothing in terms of the possible things that exist. Do you follow me? There are billions and billions and billions of galaxies. If you remove the earth from physical existence, you won't even notice it's missing. It is insignificance in terms of this space. Yet for those of us who are limited to conscious experience only through the physical body, this is it for you. And then you will draw all kinds of wrong conclusions about the nature of that which exists based upon the ignorance that is the result of our own limited conscious experience. Are you following me? Yeah. At this astral level of consciousness, we are able to have those kinds of experiences now that completely transcend the limitations of time and space as we know them at this physical level. Even your mental processes are different. This is really deep. When we are able to withdraw consciousness to the level called astral, right, then what you find is that you develop the capacity called telepathy. Interesting. Now, no words are necessary. Language is not even necessary for communication. At the astral level, people who are at the astral level need not use physical language to talk at all. It's not necessary, you see. Telepathy is the primary mode of communication, you see. It is really, really interesting. And so the experience is very, very different. The point I'm trying to get you to see is that whenever we are able to recover more and more consciousness, the result is an expansion of conscious experience in existence. You see, it's very different. And up to this level of the astral region, anybody can make it. No big deal. The master has said, Maharaj used to always say that the path starts when you come to the eye center. Most people are in confusion about this. They think the path comes when the time you get your mantra and all this. That's not when the path started. Technically, the path only starts when you can come to the eye center, right? And it is only when you come to the eye center now that one really, for the first time, really need a guru. Up until then, you really don't need a guru that much. For what are you going to do with a guru in the first place? Because you can't get out of your little toe. You understand? You're not even here. What would you do with a guru? A guru will be of no use to you. For what? You see, it is really interesting that it is only here at the astral level, when one is able to withdraw attention to this level of consciousness, that the need for a guru arises for the first time, technically. Why? Because, the experience when we are able to raise consciousness here to the astral level is so tremendous. The experience is so mind-blowing. It is almost like dying and going to heaven. In fact, most of the heavens of the world religions are nothing but a description of this first level of consciousness called astral. See? And when arriving here, now you're through. Because there's nowhere to go from here. My God, I got all this mobility, flexibility, I got telepathic powers and abilities. You know what I mean? You got all of this immense range of conscious experience. What could be beyond here? You can't even conceive of anything beyond this. And so when you get there, the tendency is to simply stop the spiritual journey. I've died and gone to heaven. I'm in heaven. I'm in paradise. No need to go any further. It is now that the master becomes necessary, because it is now that the master must somehow lure you on to higher levels of consciousness. You see? Without a master, you will simply remain stuck there. And there are many yogis that are simply stuck at the astral level. They have discovered a few cities, a few supernatural powers. They can read people's mind and all these other things, telekinesis. And they're just overwhelmed with that. They're like children, you understand? And Toys R Us. They ain't gonna never leave that place. For what? They have, in their minds, reached the highest level. And without a guru, they simply remain stuck. And they can go no further. Hence, those of us who have had the great good fortune of coming under the tutelage of a guru benefit much, you see? Because it is then that the guru manifests him or herself and tells us that, brother, sister, I have not brought you here to end the journey. I have brought you here to begin the journey. And they begin to take us into higher and higher levels of consciousness. Without the guru, there's no way, shape, form, fashion you will move beyond it. Hell, it's hard for you all to move beyond the pendulum level. Technically, the difficulty even of the guru working at the physical level, it's really hard for the guru to get us to meditate, because we can't believe there's anything better than the Bulls game. And we can't imagine anything being better than this TV program and shopping and eating and all of the other trivia that you're involved in. You can't conceive of anything better than this. Hell, I ain't got no time for no meditation stuff. I'm busy enjoying myself. That's what we tell the master. You see, not in so many words. We cover it up, we clean it up, of course, so that we can hold on to our pretended spiritual sincerity. But essentially, you see, what we're telling the master, look, I'm too busy for this stuff. Man, I got big stuff going on. I got this party to go to, and so forth and so on. The point is that you got too much good stuff now, even at this pendulum level. You can't hardly go beyond this. And that's understandable, because just a few lifetimes ago you was an animal. I know this really must be a big upgrade for many of us, right? Just a few lifetimes, that memory that is still in you when you were some squirrel living in a tree, freezing to death, scrounging for nothing. And now you can go to Jewel and eat as much as you want. You ain't going nowhere from here. You understand? You see? So I understand that. And the master, of course, has a difficult time, just physically, at this level, at the what they call the pinda level, the physical level of consciousness. The master has a hard time trying to get us to engage in this thing called meditation, to take attention to a higher level. And you see, we got all these beautiful men and all these beautiful women around here, master, you know. Come on now, you see. In fact, that's how we relate to the path. We see the path as a kind of dying, a kind of death, a kind of loss. Because if I get into my meditation, and if I really get into my sadhana, man, look what I got, what I'm gonna lose. As if you got something. What do you got? Really, think about it. What have you got that you are clinging so much to? Babbles, toys, meaningless little stuff, trivia, nonsense, stuff that is made out of the same stuff that dreams and fantasies are made of. Not of much value at all. And yet you cling to it. If the master is lucky enough, then they are able to lure us somehow into satsangs. And remember, satsang is a great thing. Swamiji Maharaji used to say that in this yuga, in this age, at this level of consciousness, this pinda level of consciousness, in this age when the vast majority of humankind will be locked at this level of the pinda mind. Swamiji Maharaji said that in this kind of time, in this kind of yuga, it is essential that satsang be attended. Now this is interesting. Elijah would tell you, and Brother Ben would tell you that, and Maharaji always impressed upon us the necessity of satsang. He was never unequivocal on that matter. Without satsang, there is no way to turn your mind from this world. Absolutely impossible. Will never happen. Can happen. All right? Without satsang, you will simply remain deluded and inebriated and fascinated with the babbles and bubbles of this world. You will not be able to turn. Hence, all masters, all saints have said that the very first stage then for the disciple, the student, the serious student that truly is in search of a higher level of consciousness, you must attend some kind of satsang. You must become immersed in the teachings, because the teachings are the only antidote to your illusionary pursuit. The teachings will open your intellectual eyes at least a little bit. It will remove enough of your blindfold so that you can see the nature, the true nature and limit of this life and this world. So satsang becomes a key component. Is that right, Elijah Sahib? Okay. Elijah Sahib, you correct me. Any moment, you stop me, because I know you and Ben Sahib know the same teachings. You've had the same great master that I've had. So don't be shy here. You see, this is all Maharaji said. So Maharaji emphasized the necessity of satsang. So if the master is fortunate enough, then they can get us to come to satsang. But now it's hard to go beyond the level of satsang. This is interesting, because for years and years, many disciples never go beyond the level of satsang. Because just hearing the teachings is so intoxicating. It gives you so much information. It fills you with so much knowledge. And that knowledge is blissful. So blissful that now you say, I don't got to meditate. I'm just going to satsang. You understand? Satsang is enough. Now, there are many brothers and sisters that I know who were initiated by Maharaji has never missed a satsang. They've missed plenty of meditation. Please make a note of that. You see, plenty of meditation. But they will not miss their satsang. Why? Because satsang fills them up. And now there's every possibility then that one will get stuck at the intellectual level of the path. This has happened to many. And the master has a hard time getting your Gita and your sutras and your Vedas and your Dhammadas and your Quran and your Bible and your scripture and your metaphysical this and your metaphysical that. We got tons of books, and we can't get enough of this stuff. We just become addicted. We're just overwhelmed with greed, and all we want to do is to read, study, and savor the teaching. Kabir Sahib says that the teachings, understanding the teachings intellectually is sweet. It is sweet. It is very sweet. It is delicious. And it is very hard in and of our own to drop. Just this intellectual relationship to the path. One of the great Sufi mystics, you see, Sham Tabriz, when he came for Malana Rum, the great Malana Rum, you see, he had a hard time initiating Malana Rum, who himself was already a great teacher. Please, I don't want you to start confusing Malana Rum with you and me. Malana Rum was way beyond us, you see. But he had one thing in common with us. He was addicted to his books. He was a bibliophile, par excellence. Pam, you and I are not bibliophiles. We're small potatoes. We just got a few thousand books, you see. Malana Rum had the entire collection of all of the wisdom systems available in the East at that time, you see. And he had created a huge sangha, you see, where he fed thousands of people from this vast storehouse of knowledge and information, you see. But he was not yet enlightened, you see, until he encountered Shams Tabriz. And Sham Tabriz, first thing he did for Malana Rum, as a condition for initiation, he said, take all of your books and throw them in the river. First condition. And why did Sham Tabriz lay that condition? Because until I can get your hands off of them books, get your mind out of them books, you'll have no motivation to go higher. Just as I've said that once you come into the astral region, the experience is so overwhelming and intoxicating, so blissful, so much superior to the experience you're having in this wakeful level of consciousness, that you lose all motivation to go beyond that. The master literally has to fight hard with you, you see. In the same way, when you encounter the Dhamma, and when you encounter the teachings for the first time, they're so overwhelming, so beautiful, that you don't want to go any further than that. But why should I meditate? Let me read, you see. Just let me come to satsang and you just go on, you know, talking about this stuff. That turns me on. I enjoy that. I can hardly wait for satsang to come, you see. Now, nothing wrong with that, but you have to understand that the master's whole effort there is now to first bring you out of the world, bring you into satsang, but also to take you even beyond the level of satsang, you see, into this process that results at higher and higher and higher levels of consciousness. Now again, we will be revisiting much of this stuff here. You see, next time we will talk about the level right beyond here, you see, because there's a level beyond the astral level, what they call the causal level of consciousness. Here, the experience again of existence is dramatically shifted. Just as the astral level of consciousness transcends the experiences of the physical level, in the same way, when we're able to withdraw consciousness a little deeper into the eye center, we're able now to awaken to the next level of consciousness. And it's very interesting that the Buddhas have used the word awaken because it's very precise. That's exactly what the experience is like. It is like waking up. Please make a difference. It's not like some intellectual deductive conclusion, therefore I understand this now, voila, I'm in light. No. It is very dramatic. It's just like waking up. Very radical. Just like when you're in a dream, right, Tony-san? And you're having a nightmare. And you're doing all kinds of things to ward off the threat that you are experiencing in the dream. You see, you're screaming, you kicking, you hollering, you doing all kind of things. You know the kind of relief you get then when you wake up out of a nightmare. And you say, man, I'm glad that was just a dream. It's a tremendous pressure that comes off you, right? In the same way, when you wake into these higher levels of consciousness, one experiences that same kind of relief. Now in this life, you worried about so much stuff. Just look at your mind. You just worried about all kinds of trivia. All kinds of stuff. Because they are a threat to you now. You see? They look like a threat to your well-being, your happiness. You see? It is a nightmare. You're simply dreaming. You're simply having a nightmare. You see? And the only antidote to a nightmare is to wake up. What other antidote is there? What can you do? If some you agree? If somebody is having a nightmare, Brother Washington, if a child is having a nightmare and they're laying there screaming, hollering, what do we say? You shouldn't be hollering and it's going to be... Do we do that? No. We shake the kid, we wake them up. In the same way, that is what the master does. You see? Elijah saw we write so many letters to the master. Oh, Maharaji, you know I'm going to... Every response is through your meditation to all your problems and your crisis. Why? Because Maharaji is saying, you're in the same state as a child laying there dreaming. Wake up. Wake up. That is the antidote, you see. So this, I want to make very clear, because there will be otherwise much confusion. You'll be under the impression you can think yourself into a high level of consciousness. And that's where most of you are at. Oh, well, Bhagwan, I can get me a good copy of a good book, and I can read this book and underline everything and highlight it. And after I finish this great secret treatise, right, after I read the Bhagwan teachings, you know, I read the Upanishads, or after I travel through all of the literature of the Sufis, you see, or if I can just get my hand on the Anurag Sagara of Kabir Shah, I'll become enlightened. No, you will not become enlightened. Please make a note of that. You will remain as much asleep then as you were before you read the book. You will simply be dreaming about different stuff. Just as last night you dreamed about something, right? And tonight you'll dream about something else, right? That's the only difference. In any case, you still remain dreaming, right? You remain dreaming. And many students write and they say, oh, Bhagwan, I'm having this experience, I'm seeing that. Just more dream stuff. Am I enlightened? Now, how can you ask that question? Bhagwan, I have seen this, I see that. Am I at Sachkhand? Now, if you were at Sachkhand, why are you asking? It's almost like waking up and saying, Bhagwan, am I awake? Now, Brother Washington, when you wake up, do you need to call me and say, Bhagwan, am I awake? It's madness, you see. It is just more dream stuff, more fantasy. You see, now you're just dreaming about different stuff, you see. And the master host task is to interrupt and break this dreaming, this deep sleep-like state that we are in. This state that renders us so unconscious that there is no possibility of having no happiness. How will you have happiness? You're too unconscious to be happy. To be happy takes a little consciousness, a little awareness, you see. And we don't have that. And so that becomes the whole task then of meditation. That is the whole point in coming to a master. So today I want to set out a variety of issues so that in the future we can move deep into the course of this ancient wisdom. You see? And not to be disappointed, not to be discouraged, because you too can attain. Why not you? If Buddha could attain a Lao Tus, a Kabir, a Jesus, a Dadu, a Swamiji Maharaj, Maharaj Charan Singh, if these people can attain, why can't you attain? They are no better than you are. You see? They have the same consciousness you have. The only difference is that they have wakened and we remain asleep. Other than that, there is no difference. You are sleeping Buddhas, one and all. You see? You are simply asleep, dreaming that you are Brother Washington, or dreaming that you are Bhagwan Rayakaka, or dreaming that you are... This is just a dream going on at the astral level. At the astral level, you are asleep, and you're dreaming this experience at the wakeful level. Just as in the dream state, it drops down from the wakeful. Now, when you go to sleep at night and you have a dream, very often you're simply dreaming about the same things that were going on at the waking level. You see? Now, somebody's insulted you. You could not say anything there because that person might fire you. Job was at risk. Do you understand? You might not get that date, etc. But now when you go into a dream, you can cuss the person out, beat the person up. You understand? It's a way of giving you some relief. But that dream very often is based on the experiences that have went on that previous day. In the same way, this waking experience that you have in now is simply a dream that has been had at the astral level of consciousness. And when you return to the astral level of consciousness on Saab, one of the most amazing things is that you regain a lot more knowledge. All that knowledge that you are unaware of now instantly is regained and rediscovered when you wake up. Just as when you wake up now, right? Now you regain all your knowledge, right? Now again you have a PhD. Now again you know where you live. Now again you know who these people. You see, but in that dream you didn't have no knowledge. In that dream you didn't know who you were, where you were, what you were. None of these things. But just by the sheer act of awakening, you awaken into a much higher level of knowledge. Please make a note of that. It is another one of the characteristics of this awakening process. Every time you wake up, you come back in touch with a much more vast range of knowledge. Much more vast. You see? Much more vast. You remember having even fell asleep into this wakeful level of training. You see? When this wakeful level now is sandwiched between the prior astral experience and the second astral experience, now for the first time, you are able to recover this. What is interesting is that now, even when you go down into the lower levels of consciousness, you never go to sleep. Because you have to understand, this lower level is included in the higher. You may move through all of these freely, and you will never lose your sense of astral consciousness. It is very profound. Very profound. You do not go to sleep. So next time we will look at the nature of conscious experience when we are able to withdraw just this minor little thing called attention into the eye center and therefore trigger the process of awakening. Now if you have some questions, please let us spend the next few minutes. I will try to answer them. Yes, brother?
That was real interesting what you were saying, especially about the book aspect. My question is, what's the connection? What you were saying is like there's a large part have to do with melanin, as far as the melatonin, as far as retaining the memory and stuff. And you have to remember everything you ever did from past experiences that you used to be, like you were seeing, like rappers, people come back 1,000 times. It seems like all that stuff is locked inside of the melatonin, since that's the hormone that controls the recall of memory of all previous experiences and lifetimes.
Yes, yes. And much of that material you experience, one of the interesting things, brother, is that in the process of meditation, at the lower levels of the astral region, right? Because the astral region is a vast region, you see, just as this physical region is vast, that it is made up of more than just this little planet called Earth, and et cetera, et cetera. In the same way, the astral region is very vast, infinitely more vast than this one. And therefore, it takes time to traverse across the entire region that is referred to as the astral region. And in the initial stages, what you begin to encounter is all of that stuff. Because that memory you see is at the astral level, what we call the Akashic records. Your memory is simply a tiny reflection of the Akashic record. It is at the astral level that not only are all of the experiences that you've had in this birth, this incarnation story, But every experience that you ever had since you've been incarnated, every odor that you smelled, every sound that you have heard, every texture that you have felt, every experience, however minute, every itch that you have felt, right? That whole experience is stored in consciousness. And as you move deep into the course of meditation, sometimes your first experience is of the unconscious, the material that you are unconscious of, the shadow stuff that you have pushed out of this level of waking consciousness, you see? And very often you encounter that, you see? All of your phobias begin to manifest, you see. Now someone is meditating and a devil come after him. You see, it scares the hell out of them. But this is just the contents of your own unconscious, you see. You're moving deep now, you see, beyond the surface. You're moving deeper into this, you see.
I got one more question.
Yes, brother.
The name you gave,
Prakiti, yes.
Prakiti.
Yes.
Like in Tibetan theology, it's not associated with the
Actually, the term Prakiti comes from the Hindu in terms of its relationship to the Nu. The Nu is the name that the ancient African sages and mystics gave to this pure potentiality out of which things come into being. So we mustn't confuse it. Prakriti is one of the things that came out of the Nu. It is that thing that served as the physical stuff of which the universe is made. What they call the 5 fundamental elements. What the Hindus call the tattvas. You see? You have to understand that everything that exists all the way up to the level of the mind is made out of matter. Very refined, but matter nevertheless. Hence, they are not referred to as the pure spiritual levels of being. In the ancient Kemetic system, you see, this level of pure spiritual being was called Nu, or Nu, right? It was that which existed before the first time. No time had anything came into being. Ptah had not yet arisen in the noon. The noon was just this sea, this soup, this void, this darkness, right, of undifferentiated and unmanifest pure potentiality.
It's also, could you equate that with the Bible, the primordial dark waters?
The primordial dark waters. You'll find these terms spread through so many of the various creation myths and so many of the different religions. What they all are pointing to is that this that we call existence itself emerged out of something that was not existent, you see, but was the potential out of which all that can exist come. Totally undifferentiated. In fact, when the mystics begin to speak about this level of being, and this is a level of beingness, then all language ceases. They have only been able to say things in a negative way. Nete, nete. It's not this, it's not that, it's not this. It's not like anything that you experience. There's no time, there is no space, there is no causality, there's not even any you. Now this is deep. There is no you. Because what are you calling you? That which you are calling you is nothing but a drop out of this same primordial thing. It has no independent existence. It is an illusion. You see? So we will be going into that as we go along. But you're absolutely right in beginning to draw some parallel, because of all the various forms of mysticism being taught on the planet, brother, all of them, without any exception, must be traced back to these African sages. There is no wisdom system on the planet that has not owed its origin to the incredible insights and spiritual attainment of these African original gurus. You see?
I want to ask you one question. But I've been studying. My conclusion is this new is we have a saying it's above, so below, just on a smaller scale.
Yes, yes, yes.
So I've been studying. It seems to me that this new they talk about, everything coming from the new, is really actuality down here, what we call melanin.
Sure. Well, not so much melanin. Why just melanin? This new is everything.
Well, it's a little bit of melanin in everything.
Yes, but that's just color, or the absence of color. But the point is that you will not find anything. Now, what color is consciousness? You think consciousness is hormonally produced? Please. It's just the reverse. You see what I'm saying? Now, that means that there's something prior to melanin. Out of what did melanin come? And that is the direction to look at. Then you're moving close. You see, we cannot reduce God to a chemical process.
Okay, I got one question. Though.
One more, okay. Yes, brother, you got more than one more, but we're only going to take one more. Yes. But these are very profound questions.
As far as association with consciousness, it seems that in anything that has a spinal cord in the brain, all right, the 12 regions of the brain, what separates an animal from man is the amount of the regions of the brain that are melanated. The more regions of the brain that are melanated, the more self-consciousness, the higher up the celestial level, the greater you get.
I understand your thing, because I know that Dr. King has wrote much about these theories. So has Mother Liambi and so many other writers. But these are not mystics, please, with all due respect. These are scholars. At best, they are biologists, chemists. And there's much that chemists and biologists do not know. The masters have given a very different kind of explanation that deals with the difference in the levels of consciousness and the variety of beings. The first thing that the masters have said, that you will find, for instance, on this earth plane, that consciousness will manifest itself in 8,400,000 different variety of forms, fibers, right? And the thing that determines how much consciousness functions through a particular form is what that form itself is made out of. That's interesting. And all forms are made out of these 5 fundamental tactors, or earth elements, right? Now, when you examine things a little closer, brother, what you will find that different forms are made up of different combinations and quantities of these 5 fundamental tactors, or elements. And it is the extent that these 5 tactors exist in any form that determines how much consciousness is conducted through that form. Much like in electricity, you see, there are certain metals that are not as conductive for electricity as others, and that is because of their atomic structure, naturally. In the same way, the presence of all 5 tactors will always result in a much higher level of consciousness than in those forms of life that are not made up of all of the 5 tactors, you see. So we will have to go into this a little bit more. It is very unfair of me to condense this kind of answer to just a few casual remarks. But if you will send that to me, your questions, then I will see to it that either I'll try to answer them or refer you to the literature that will give you a much better explanation. Are there any other questions? Yes, brother.
What is a very simple form of meditation that can be started? I mean, it's real simple, where I can just start.
None. All of them are. No, I understand. Appreciate your
point. To be reduced to like a small time frame or something like, so I wouldn't have to eliminate excuses.
Yes. Yes. Well, you see, there are so many different kinds of ways to meditate. But one of the things, brother, I have to draw for you is the distinction between meditation and what we are calling meditation. Now, for most of us, the first task in training is how to concentrate. And we're confusing concentration with meditation. They are very different phenomena. Meditation happens after one has achieved a degree of concentration. And in order to build concentration, there are many varieties, many methods, you see, for doing so. In the tradition that I come out of, the master used mantras for purposes of building the capacity to concentrate. And then once this capacity to concentrate has matured, you see, then we are now able to move to the next level, which is technically called meditation. If you are familiar with the yoga systems of Patanjali, you see, he makes a distinction too between concentration, what they call dharana, and dhyana, meditation. Very different phenomena. The other thing, brother, and I will try to answer your question in much greater detail if you will just maybe contact the law, because again, it's a good question and I want to give you a full answer, but there's not enough time to do that. The other point you have to understand, brother, that meditation, concentration, spiritual practice must be done in a certain milieu, in a certain context. For instance, it makes no sense in trying to practice spirituality without simultaneously working on your personal moral life, your diet, and etc., etc. Now, my assumption is that you look like a brother who has already understood all of these things and perhaps have already created a context now, right, in order to sit your spiritual practices. So In addition to a technique for concentrating the mind, one will definitely have to work on one's whole life and bring it in what our ancestors call a certain requisite level of ma'at. Right? A certain level of ma'at has to be there, a certain milieu, a certain atmosphere, a certain kind of environment has to be first created. And then as far as meditation and spiritual practice, the actual technique, I can only tell you about the way I was trained. You see, I'm not able to speak from other perspectives. But in the system that I was trained in, you see, we use a mantra initially for meditation purposes of concentrating the mind. Then once the concentration has been further developed, then we are able to pick up what we have called the shabad, or the sound current, or the audible life stream. What the African mystics call the numo, the Muslim mystic called kama, logos, nad. There's been so many names. But essentially, what we're experiencing at that time is we're able to concentrate the attention on the sound, the vibration that has emerged from this nu that this brother was talking about. In the state of nu, you see, there is this energy that emerges from there, and it makes a sound. And it is by focusing the attention on this sound that ultimately we're able to arrive back at the highest levels of consciousness in a full identification. So the thing that I would tell you to do, I shouldn't say publicly, but if you give me a call, right, then I'll be more than happy. Yes, brother, last question.
Okay, in the beginning of the lecture you alluded to there was like a fusion with consciousness and our I, our being, and that was somehow lost. And is that related to the breath of life that the baby takes? Or is there a connection there? Where was the separation from total consciousness?
Yes. You see, that is again one of the great mysteries, you see. Now, the truth of the matter, brother Washington, is that there is no separation from totality. It does not exist by definition. At all times, we are existent in that which we call God, because simply there is no other possibility. There is no alternative existence. It's not like there's the God existence and the not God existence, or the be God existence. It's just existent. And so at no time are you not in direct relationship, direct connection with that which you call God. The thing is that we have lost the awareness of it. You see? And you say that when did that happen? When we begin to misidentify, as we begin to confuse ourselves with this body and all of the various other forms that our consciousness takes. It is then now that we lose that awareness. One of the interesting things that you would discover, Brother Washington, especially in the process called meditation, and especially at that level that we have called concentration, what you will find is this, that whenever you concentrate your attention on anything, by definition you lose awareness of the other thing. You see my point? And in the same way, when you concentrated all your attention on this body, you lost your awareness of that ocean of existence around you. And the way to recapture that awareness, of course, is to liberate and uncontract the attention. And that's what meditation is. Meditation is not concentration. Please make a note of that. You see, meditation is coming to a point where nothing distracts you. Now in meditation, you're easily distracted. A horn blows, a child hollers, and immediately you become distracted. In a state of meditation, nothing distracts. Everything is just moving through this consciousness. And this consciousness remains absolutely clear, undistracted. Nothing distracts. It simply picks up all experience. So we lost then this connection, Brother Washington, with God the moment we contracted our awareness down to this physical level. And the moment we restored this free, loose state of consciousness, again you will discover that you have never been separated from God. But the African ancestors term as the experience of Anuk Asaha. I and God are one. But the Hindu mystics meant when they exclaim Aham Brahmasmi, or the Muslim mystic when they exclaim Anarhak. All of these are again statements that automatically come when one regains that awareness. The great Master Jesus says that I and my Father are one. He had came to this level of realization, you see, in which he could do nothing but state the same truth, that all mystics, all saints, and we will too, whenever we do the same. So that's a short answer, and you know, Brother Washington, how to get your long answer. I think that's enough for today.